In the green darkness of the 41st millennium, there are only prophets. Grab your axes, both peak and battle, and set off to plunder the galaxy. The dwarvish faction of the Leagues of Votann are here to strike it rich and exploit the galaxy's resources in order to survive the harsh realities of their surroundings. Unbeknownst to the Imperium, the kin of the Votann are actually descended from humanity. A fact that they want to keep hidden away from any Imperial scrutiny. The ancestors of the kin were actually part of the pre-Imperial expansionist fleets that left Terra to create settlements near the galactic core of the Milky Way. These ships contained artificial intelligences that contained all of the knowledge that these explorers would need to survive. These intelligences would eventually be dubbed as Votann ancestor cores, and they would help create stable lives for the explorers through the use of cloning technology. The Votann would create a breed of human that would be sturdier, stronger, and more resistant to warp mutation in the form of genetic templates known as clone skeins. Over time, the standard humans of the expedition eventually were phased out in favour of the cloned kin that are seen today. Now, they are a thriving faction within the galactic core that primarily work as merchants, mercenaries, and scavengers. The core of the galaxy offers up a nearly endless wealth of rare materials and elements that have allowed the Leagues of the Votann to create technology that is much more advanced and commonplace than their ignorant Imperial counterparts. They do not fear AI, rather they embrace it as one would a comrade and a friend. Their ships have a more reliable form of warp travel. Also, they are more willing to work with other alien races. If I could say that there was one thing in common they have with the Imperium, it's that they are incredibly stubborn and will hold on to grudges until they are resolved, or they die. Remember, honor your deals with the Leagues, or else they will personally seek you out to collect and take everything they are owed, per the terms of your League-stamped contract.
Now, why don't we go ahead and take a look at the various members of the Leagues, and how they form the society that has managed to make a hellscape like the galactic core their home. How does a civilization of clones and AI robots cohabitate while avoiding the suspicions of the Imperium? And what is their purpose other than profit in this war-torn galaxy? Let's dig into the crust of this mystery with one of the more interesting members of the Leagues. I love a good brew. It keeps my fuel cells charged just like any other organic meat bag. Don't look too much into this, Imperial. Ironkin, the completely mechanical and advanced sapient robots of the Leagues of Votann. They are constructed by the ancestor cores, and none of the kin are sure of when they first appeared. Regardless, they are seen as invaluable to the Leagues, as they are prominent helpers within the civilization. They mine minerals in dangerous environments, carry heavy equipment, process navigational data at astonishing rates, etc. Such tasks would have the Ironkin viewed as being regulated to a servant class by outside observers. However, the flesh and blood kin of the Leagues view the Ironkin as equals and even friends. Kin is kin among this society, and they would gladly fight and die for each other should the situation call for it. The technology that makes up an Ironkin is relatively advanced in terms of robotics in the galaxy. Their cerebral units, the hardware that makes up their personalities, are protected by microfield generators, which make them incredibly difficult to destroy. Due to this, an Ironkin can be recovered from a battlefield and placed into a new body with their AI relatively intact. Since the Leagues of Votann trade with a myriad of different alien species, the Ironkin can project a holographic image of a regular kin's face onto their head units to allow for better interactions and to stave off any nosy Imperial or Mechanicus investigations. This disguise can be so convincing that an Ironkin can fool their kin companions into thinking they aren't machines at times. Their durable bodies make for good frontline units in a defensive battle, and they can wield weapons that would usually be too heavy for a single kin to carry. An Ironkin can be stationed as a wayfinder on kindred ships, where they use their computational prowess to safely plot warp routes for faster-than-light travel. Their sapience has led them to share all kinds of experiences with their kin companions, such as contemplating their collective roles that the Votann have created them to do. The Ironkin also go so far as to change their own motor functions when they want to experience drunkenness alongside their organic cousins. Different versions of these robots include the more advanced Cognitar units and the less advanced and drone-like Cog units. Created to be the helpers of the kin, these sapient AI are included as the beloved family members amongst the Leagues.
Protect the hold! Remember, the ancestors are watching!
Kin, militarized hearthkin. The living members of the Leagues of Votann that are also created by the ancestor cores. Every kin is not birthed naturally. Instead, they are vatgrown in a device known as a crucible, and they are almost always born fully grown adults. They form social groups called kindreds based on their shared history of originating from the same crucible. Their genetic traits are determined by the Votann, who monitor their gestation using clone skeins, templates with stable mutations that will make up the phenotypes and genotypes of the growing kin. To a kin, their existence is owed completely to the ancestor cores, and they immediately believe they are created for a purpose. To all of these individuals, they see themselves as the eyes of the ancestors, and, as such, they must live fulfilling lives to gain as much experience as they can. Some choose to become prospectors, while others work as artisans. No one specifically tells them what to do with their lives when they are born, with the rare exception being the direct input from a Votann. But the genetic traits they are given usually influences their career paths and helps nudge them in certain directions. Kin can be bred to have tougher skin, a particular body odor, multicolored hair, night vision, gravity resistance, etc. This makes them into a race that is incredibly versatile, which is necessary given that they need to make an existence for themselves near the core of the galaxy. Also, kin are created without a sense of existential dread. They are aware of who they are, how they came to be, and what they are supposed to do. This doesn't mean they don't experience fear, as the Votann have deemed it necessary for their species to survive. Every kin has some form of combat training, either bred into them during their creation or by choosing to master martial disciplines after birth. This makes a hold, a center for their society, absolutely filled with potential soldiers that can be called upon in times of defense. Such civilian troops and basic enlisted are called hearthkin warriors, and will fight to their dying breaths to make sure their home and its core is protected. When a kin dies and their body is recoverable, they will be taken into biorecyclers and have their consciousnesses uploaded to the ancestor cores. Their experiences feeding new data into the massive supercomputers so that they can better understand the galaxy and chart new courses of action to keep their race alive. Just don't ask where they find the biomass to make more people if too many bodies are unrecoverable.
Let's get out there, lads, and don't waste that ammo!
Theyn, the leaders of the various squads that show up in the different military groups of kin. They usually lead around somewhere between 10 to 20 kin in battle and coordinate with their squads through the use of cybernetic implants. At this rank, you could compare the Theyn to a sergeant in other factions. It is here that kin can make a name for themselves among their massively extended family. The Theyn are known for being top candidates for promotions among their kindred. A Theyn could go on to become a Kahls champion, or even a leader of an entire hold.
Ah, space. The final paycheck.
Hernkyn, the scout forces of the Leagues that go out into unexplored far space, the area outside of a League's control, and seek any suitable new mining or mercantile operations. They are brutal survivalists that live away from the rest of their kindred, sometimes decades at a time. A Hernkyn's job is incredibly dangerous, but they do it with honor and pride because they know that the information they come across will prove invaluable to their League's ancestor core and, by proxy, their hold's continued survival. They often interact with various alien races that are open to trade with them, which allows them to learn about other cultures. Additionally, since the galaxy is filled with horrors beyond mortal comprehension, the Hernkyn often sell their services as mercenaries for hire. They will take on bounty listings from their allies that offer a large enough prize. Hernkyn are also known for being the armored cavalry force of a Votann army. They love to ride around on their Magna coil bikes while blasting the enemy with all sorts of ion and bolt weaponry. Now, since their jobs as scouts and explorers are so perilous, Hernkyn ships usually contain legacy vaults that they can upload a neural map of themselves just in case they happen to die from whatever certain death event they find themselves in. The legacy vault will hold on to this data until it can be recovered and given over to an ancestor core. The vault can also back up the data of an Ironkyn's cerebral unit. A Hernkyn's clone skein usually creates them to be more migratory and less inclined to be cooped up in a hold. Whereas Votann culture usually stresses the importance of family and togetherness, the necessity of exploration will push these individuals out into the stars to see what can be profited from them. But they never forget where they came from and will return to defend their holds immediately should they ever be threatened. The kin's own version of rogue traders, the Hernkyn expand their league's influence while living free and wealthy lives.
Dig through the rock and stone to find what is rightfully ours.
Chthonians, Chthonian mining guilds. The eager prospectors that have made an art out of disassembling valuable hulls the Hernkyn find. There are various guilds within the leagues, but the Chthonian mining guilds are arguably the most valuable, as they provide the wealth that their kind seek. After the Hernkyn have found a suitable site for resource gathering, they sell the rights to that spot to the mining guilds. These miners have the experience and the capability to convert anything into usable materials. Being more cybernetically augmented compared to their other kin, these miners can be actively working in the most dangerous of job sites. They've mined entire suns, toxic stellar clouds, and roaming asteroids. Chthonians also salvage dead Tyrannid bioships. Clone skeins for miners tend to grant them ultra-dense bones, radiation resistance, night vision, vacuum-packed organs, perception of a wider light spectrum range, and tolerance to zero gravity. In battle, they wield weapons that are just heavily repurposed mining equipment. Those that become more augmented take on the role of Chthonian berserks. These warriors will risk life and limb to get to whatever precious resources an enemy may be guarding. They do this while wielding the very tools they'll use to extract the resources as armor-breaking weaponry. Now, not all kin miners join a Chthonian guild, but many seek out their accreditation because these guilds have a vast network of void ships that give an advantage for potential profit. Despite their rather pirate-like reputations, Chthonian miners do not choose war as a first reaction. They usually negotiate first, because war wastes resources. And when they are inevitably rejected, they fight with all they have to liberate the precious materials they seek. That is, until the costs outweigh the benefits, and they leave to go find another opportunity for wealth. Some kin may view the Chthonians as maniacs for going to the extremes they do to seek profits. But to these intrepid miners, it is a calling that the ancestors have embedded into their very beings.
Those Mechanicus bozos don't know the first thing about science, and they call us crude.
Brokhyr, the engineers and craftsmen of the Leagues. These individuals know everything about the advanced technologies of their faction and are always seen trying to improve their current designs. They work within the holds of their kindred at their anvil terminals with every resource they could need at their disposal. A Brokhyr is prideful of being able to make their own machines for whatever task they face, using their own personal tools. It is not unheard of for them to build their own cog units and Ironkin frames. Guilds from all over the Leagues depend on these mechanical geniuses for their equipment, especially the mining guilds. A newly born kin who wishes to apprentice under a Brokhyr must show their aptitude for crafting by making a piece of gear or mechanical item that will impress their prospective master. A kin with a clone skein that gives them dexterous hands and a tolerance to heat and electrical pain may find themselves drawn to this profession. Brokhyr may, at first, appear to be nothing more than those in a supporting role for their holds. But they are capable of handling some of the heavier and more violent weapons of their kind. Brokhyr Thunderkin take to the battlefield in large exo-frames that allow them to carry and fire Votann bolt cannons and SP conversion beamers. The Iron Masters of the Brokhyr are experts in commanding large groups of semi-autonomous ECOG drones and can perform quick repairs on even the most heavily damaged vehicle or ship. A supremely skilled and experienced Brokhyr will become a Forge Master, who is relied upon as a tactician. These paragons of their craft are known for smithing masterwork weapons and advising in a kindred's Votannic council in times of war. Constantly working to improve upon what they have, the Brokhyr keep the Leagues of Votann ahead of their distant cousins in the Mechanicus.
The future of my kindred is shielded by this axe, and I will gladly bury it in the skulls of those who threaten it.
Embyr, the guardians of a Hold's crucible, who are oath-bound to defend it until their dying breaths. Kin that are given the rare clone skein that allows them to tap into the warp do not have open career paths. The Embyr are one of the two groups of kin that have this rare gene template, and they use it to better protect their crucibles. The way in which the Leagues utilize psychic powers is done in a much safer manner compared to their Imperial cousins, since they use their advanced technology that diminishes the chances of invoking the perils of the warp. Not only are they stalwart defenders of one of the most crucial aspects of the Leagues, they also serve as medics that are capable of wading through fights to get to a patient. When a kin dies, it is these medics that determine whether or not the kin's memories are able to be uploaded to the League's ancestor core. The Embyr may have a direct hand in how a kin's clone skein is determined, as they may need certain attributes to be more prevalent in their Hold's society, given the various situations their homes may be in. Always looking after their kindred's future, the Embyr stand vigilant as guardians, medics, and morticians.
All that for a dent on me shield!
Einhyr hearthguards. The elite foot soldiers of the Leagues. The Einherjer are veterans of fighting and serve closely alongside the leadership of whatever campaigns they find themselves in as bodyguards and shock troops. Unlike the other groups we've seen so far, the Einherjer are not led by a Theyn, but instead a squad leader called a Hearthguard. Thayns are what usually become Einherjer due to their remarkable service during their careers. They are given some of the best military equipment the kindred can give them. Some of these include exosuits made of ultra-dense materials that are easily maneuverable due to the servo assistance that they have. Tanks could hit them dead on, and they would barely be bothered. The armor is also capable of certain crests or ornament pieces that allow for personal force fields and teleportation. The most elite of these elite warriors go on to become Einherjer champions, who will follow their calls into the heat of battle. These peerless warriors of the Leagues wield the best that their species has to offer and embody the martial might of the kin.
The Votann speak through me. Computers have given me the power of the warp.
Grimnyr, the psychic kin that commune with the Votann and relay their messages to the rest of their brethren, also known as the living ancestors. The Grimnyr look after and use one of the most important devices contained within the depths of a kindred's hold, the Theyn. Thayns are essentially nodes that wirelessly connect to the ancestor cores stored in the most secure parts of a League's domain. It is through these ancient supercomputers that a Grimnyr will interface with and seek out knowledge of whatever they wish to know from the Votann. Kin are created naturally resistant to the warp and its influence, but the Votann have seen fit that a psychoactive clone skein was necessary for this role especially. It appears that being psychic is essential to this process, as the equipment to operate a Theyn all involve the mind of the Grimnyr mentally interfacing with it. A Grimnyr can also hold a function similar to the Imperium's astropaths. The Thayns they work with have the additional function of communicating with each other over vast interstellar distances at a nearly instantaneous speed. Messages are received between holds, and this allows for various kindreds to maintain contact with each other. A Grimnyr's job makes them universally respected among kin society, and they are seen to speak with the voice of the ancestors themselves. They also act in a battlefield role as indispensable bulwarks against the more warp-based terrors that a kindred may face. The advanced technology of the Leagues makes it so that Grimnyrs can use special types of cogs, known as Corv units, that help the psychic channel the immaterium while defending them with barrier tech and mounted bolters. These sage-like kin attack with bolts of etheric power from their ancestral warding staves, which are carved with specialized runes. It can be assumed that, like with Imperial psykers, Grimnyrs can specialize in certain schools of warp sorcery. They are just safer about practicing it. An elevated rank for this group of kin is known as the High or Lord Grimnyr. A hold will usually have exactly one of these, and they are always seated at the kindred's Votannic Council as a ceremonial and spiritual advisor. The role of Grimnyr was never originally created when the Leagues were first established. But, as the Votann degraded over time, these advanced AI found it necessary to create this role so that some of the burden could be alleviated from the machines. In a galaxy of psychic terrors, the Grimnyr are an invaluable defense against the unseen and whispered.
You call this brew? I've tasted orc blood that was more appealing.
Kahls, the generals of a kindred's oath bands and expeditions, veterans of many military campaigns and domain expansions, Kahls command large swaths of kin. They are only subservient to a hold's Votannic Council. A Kahl specializes in military leadership and strategies that quickly identify prime enemy targets. They also make sure that a battle is profitable, another way of them saying that the losses do not overshadow the victories. Of course, they are given the best armaments that they can equip on their person. Kahls are also viewed as strong cultural symbols within their armies. Ascending through the ranks over an entire lifetime of conflict, the Kahls answer the calling of their higher High Kahls.
We have come so far from our original home, and in the face of this galaxy's inferno, we've profited and thrived.
High Kahls, the leader of an entire kindred and its hold. Promoted from the rank of a normal Kahl, a High Kahl leads the future of their kindred from their throne on their Votannic Council. When a High Kahl passes away, it is up to the Council and the Leagues Votann to decide on which Kahl to replace them. The opinions of the Votann, naturally, weigh the heaviest on the decision-making process. The position, naturally, comes with immense responsibility which the reluctant chosen Kahl might be put off by. It is at this rank that all matters within and around the kindred are heard and judged. Outstanding debts to other kindreds and plans for war are all settled with the High Kahl, and only steep opposition can prevent them from acting on their ideas. The guildmasters within the kindred voice their concerns to the High Kahl as representatives for the regular kin. If a High Kahl dies while indebted to a guild or individual, then the next High Kahl is expected to pay it. If they don't, then the kindred is likely to suffer from the guild's influence within their hold. Important defensive systems could be turned off, or materials may not be processed. The burdens of deals, debts, and profits are all put under scrutiny by the High Kahl, and it is part of the reason why a Kahl would be dissuaded from this rank. Not only these issues, but a High Kahl is expected to remove themselves from fighting in wars or struggles for resources entirely. They are expected to give up their lives of adventure for this ultimate honor. But it's not like they have a choice in the first place about whether or not to accept the job. Still, Whenever there is a war over the future of their kindred, or there is a quest presented that offers the greatest of rewards, they will militarily direct their brothers and sisters for their entire clan's continued existence.
Almighty Votann, the first ancestor, have you finally emailed that STC after 500 years?
Votann, ancestor cores. The supercomputers that the kin revere because they contain the collective knowledge of the kin and the first ancestors. They were created millennia ago during the time of the first expeditions to the galactic core. The data contained within them allowed the kin to prosper in such a harsh and deadly environment. These advanced cogitators contained everything from weapon blueprints to resource harvesting and even standard template constructs. It can be assumed that the instructions given by the Votann eventually led to kin society, as these computers judged the physiological and psychological changes among the initial explorers were necessary for survival. Currently, the number of active ancestor cores are smaller in number, and each league has their own number of cores. It is these Votann where a kin's mind is uploaded after death, so that their life experiences can be added into the computer's decision-making processes. Generations of doing this while also being constantly used have caused the cores to degrade over time, as even these amazing machines have their limits in terms of memory and processing. This has caused some unforeseen consequences, such as the AI of the Votann developing quirks and idiosyncrasies. Also, when a question is asked of them, the Votann might take decades or even centuries to answer it, compared to their speed when originally activated. The Thanes that the Grimnyr interface with can seemingly evolve over time and become new Votann, while old Votann devolve to the point of being classified as the more simplistic Thanes. The kin practically worship these grand machines, but they don't seem to realize that their actions have been doing gradual harm to them. But still, they are beloved by the kin, and their existence is of utmost secrecy. The Votann are kept under tight security, and their existence is not even disclosed to the League's allies, because the Leagues know that such knowledge would shatter any current flimsy alliances. Occasionally, an ancestor core that was once lost might be found by a kindred, and it instantly becomes a first priority to recover it. Who knows what wealth of lost knowledge it might contain? And the kin are pretty sure that every other faction would either try to destroy it or study it and eventually conclude that the Leagues are associated with the core. Despite the degradation of the Votann, the kin have managed to flourish in the deadly environments they ended up with since first leaving Terra. Their society and culture is owed to the Votann's meticulous instructions, and now they are capable of reshaping the galaxy to fit their needs. They were also given eternal companions through the Ironkin, and they basically have their own version of an afterlife through the uploading of their memories into the cores. The Votann did their jobs, and now it is time for the kin to make sure that they are always protected and operational. Reminds you of a pattern similar to a certain Golden Emperor and his subjects, doesn't it? The Leagues of Votann are very interesting to me because, when you think about it, they are a version of humanity that succeeded in their journey to colonize the stars, and they didn't suffer from the dark age of technology. Sure, they had to physically change themselves to the point where they look like abhumans or an alien species, but that was a sacrifice that paid off in the end. Thank you all for watching this lore video and sharing your enthusiasm for this faction with me. Please consider buying me a coffee using the link here and in the description box. Money is always needed to fund the character art for these kinds of videos, and it is always appreciated. Please look forward to the next video. It'll be an unexpected surprise. Until then,